I've been editing videos with a 5K ultrawide monitor for a little over a year now, and it has been a fantastic experience. I love the resolution, I love the amount of screen real estate that I've had for my timelines, but there's been one limitation that I've become aware of, and that limitation is due to this camera right here, a Panasonic S1 II, because this camera is capable of filming in 6K resolution, and I have had no way of viewing the footage that I filmed with this camera natively on any monitor. None of them have been high enough resolution, meaning that I've always had to let the monitor downscale my footage to view it in a lower resolution. And while this may not sound like a lot going from a 5K ultrawide monitor to a 6K resolution camera, that is actually 75% more pixels that this camera can record than that monitor can show. A pretty gosh darn big difference, which means that I've never been able to view it in its full resolution natively. That is until now, because this right here behind me is the ASUS ProArt PA32QCV, which just rolls off the tongue there. It is a 6K monitor, and let me just say, this monitor feels purpose-built for video editors. It's incredibly color accurate with a very wide color space, and there's really only one limitation that I found that we're going to talk about, as well as all of my other thoughts, because today I'm going to be reviewing this monitor from the perspective of a video editor that also does some gaming on the side, and I'm going to tell you whether you should buy this monitor. In addition, for the sake of ethics, I want you to know this video is not sponsored by ASUS. I haven't been paid by them, but they did send me this monitor, so I would be able to make this review. That said, though, this video does have a sponsor, and it's my friends at Artlist, and I will tell you more about them a bit later. Also, considering that this is a review for video editors, if you want to level up your video editing, I would highly recommend downloading my Edit Videos Like a Pro guide that's going to be linked down in the video description. It's completely free, and it's going to share with you some of my biggest tips for video editing, and I think you're going to find it really helpful. Anyways, getting right into the review, this monitor, like all monitors, comes in a big box that's inside another big box, and overall the unboxing process was really smooth, which is always a plus whenever you're dealing with such a large piece of equipment like a monitor. And once you get it out of the box, you're going to see just how huge this monitor is. It ain't no ultra-wide that's like the width of your arms extended, but it is still a massive screen. ASUS calls it 32 inches in the product name, hence the PA32, but next to that product name in large text, you're going to see that it's actually a 31.5 inch monitor, which I don't think is a big deal. This monitor's still massive. They can round up a bit if they want to. And then once you get the monitor turned on, let me turn your attention to one of my favorite physical features of it, and that is the front, which has a minimal bezel except for a strip along the bottom. And what is this? Buttons on the front of a monitor? ASUS. This is amazing. Here's the deal. Over the years with monitors and TVs, I feel like companies have all moved away from putting the controls on the front of the monitor, instead opting for buttons on the bottom or worse on the back. And while I agree that this makes for a smoother and much cleaner look overall aesthetically, from an actual usability perspective, it's usually a nightmare when you have to change input or adjust a setting, which is happening more and more often as monitor companies cram more and more tech features into a monitor like speakers, KVM switches, various inputs, etc. You have to run your hands along the bottom or back of the monitor and just start pressing buttons blindly because you can't read the labels on any of them. You're just hoping that one of them will work, and then they all inevitably have this interface where they expect you to know which button you're pressing and which one of them is going to enable or disable a setting, but you don't know. You're just pressing blindly. One of them goes up and down, another's going to go back. Some of them have joysticks. Joysticks on a monitor. It's just annoying. In the same way that Apple removing all their ports and adding a touch bar to their laptops was annoying. It is aesthetics at the cost of usability. But here comes ASUS with this ProArt monitor, and they say, forget your back and bottom buttons. We don't need no aesthetics here. Here is all of the buttons that you need, and we'll even throw in a little nipple joystick to make things easier for you, all on the front, so you can clearly access them. This is great. All the monitor companies should do this. Somebody start a petition. I will sign it. Anyways, we're not done with physical features quite yet. Namely, the monitor also has a really nice stand that comes with it that you can use to adjust the height very easily, and it also enables you to rotate the monitor vertically, you know, in the event that you want to be editing an Instagram reel vertically at 6K resolution. Some of you just died whenever I said that, which is very funny. Anyways, on the back, there are a good amount of inputs, but surprisingly, not quite as much as I thought there would be, which might be a slight detraction for you, so we need to talk about it. As far as inputs go, you have one HDMI 2.1 port, one DisplayPort 1.4 port, which I realize some of you may be typing in the comments to me about right now, and we'll talk about in a little bit, I promise. 4 USB Type-C ports that act as a hub, one of which is a 96-watt Thunderbolt 4 port for charging and sending a display from your laptop, another 15-watt USB-C port for charging your phone or daisy chaining this monitor to another monitor, one general USB Type-C port, and 2 USB Type-A's that are 5 watts. Oh, and one headphone jack. At this point, I'm sure you're probably wondering, what the heck, Matt? That's a ton of supports. Why are you surprised about the lack of ports that you were saying? Well, I think my issue comes down to there being only one HDMI port and one display port. And I realize that Thunderbolt can also be used as an input, but what's a little weird to me is that this monitor costs a good amount over $1,000. I'm told it's going to be $1,300, but my basic $300 Dell monitor that I bought years ago has 2 HDMI inputs. And for me, I'm someone that uses 2 or 3 computers on their desk. I have a custom-built Windows PC next to a Mac Mini, next to a MacBook Air, and I realize I may be a bit more of a niche use case, but if you're editing a video and you have a lot of devices and you want to connect them all to your monitor, you may find yourself wanting an extra HDMI, for example, so I want you to be aware of that. Anyways, let's turn this puppy on now and talk about what you really care about, how the screen looks. And let me just say, if you bought a 6K TV, which I don't think they really make 6K TVs. Manufacturers kind of skip 6K, went straight from 4K to 8K, but I digress. If you had a 6K TV in your living room, you probably wouldn't appreciate it much because you're going to be sitting so far away from it. But if you are sitting or standing at a desk editing a video and you're only a foot or 2 away from a 6K screen, wow. You can really tell with this monitor, especially considering it has over double the pixels of a 4K screen. It has so much detail packed into it. Or, let me put it another way, this thing looks good. And are you really surprised? It's a ProArt monitor. ASUS has built this brand over many years as their flagship brand for filmmakers and photographers that need incredibly color accurate screens, and this is checking that box. It looks gorgeous. That said, and this is where we need to get into one of the quirks of this monitor that you need to be aware of, which is really a quirk with every ultra high resolution display out there, and that is that even at the relatively large 32-inch display screen size that this thing has, you need to be aware that the pixel density for this screen is extremely high at 216 pixels per inch, making it essentially what Apple users would consider a retina display, where you can't distinguish the individual pixels. What's the quirk, Matt? This sounds like a great thing. Well, it comes down to just how everything will look on your computer's operating system at the native 6K resolution. In short, if you set this screen to 6K and you don't apply any scaling, everything on the screen, the buttons, the interface, the menus, text, etc., are all going to be extremely tiny. We're talking you got to get super close and squint to see them, and if you're over the age of 35 like I am, you're going to be like, what am I looking at here? Uh-oh. So you might want to do some scaling. Thankfully, both Windows and Mac support scaling, and I'm happy to tell you that I tested this screen with both a Mac and a PC, and it worked very well. With the PC UI scaled up to 200%, and the Mac with its default 2x scaling, which is also 200% the equivalent there, where it shows the system interface at 3K resolution, but will play back videos in 6K, which is what you want as a video editor. Otherwise, why are you buying a 6K monitor, right? Anyways, let's talk numbers. This is a 6016 by 3384 resolution 10-bit IPS panel, aka 6K, aka the same 16 by 9 aspect ratio and resolution as the Apple Pro Display XDR, but for significantly less money and also less brightness than that display costs and has. Where the Apple Pro Display R can hit a maximum peak brightness of 1600 nits in HDR, this ASUS is dramatically less at only 600 nits of peak brightness. But that said, it's still quite a bright screen. If you're in a dark room, your guys are going to be like, wow, I'm really watering here. And if you have it at 6K, you're already squinting. So it's going to be assaulting your eyes. Let me put it that way. To be clear, you could still use this ASUS monitor to edit HDR footage if you wanted to. And in addition, if you are editing standard dynamic range footage, which the vast majority of filmmakers that I know are doing because they're making videos for YouTube or for clients that want to put their videos on YouTube, you do not necessarily need an HDR workflow. And this monitor will work very well for video editing. I have to say too, after using this monitor for a while, editing my own videos and experiencing what it's capable of from an image quality and brightness standpoint, if you already have an Apple Pro Display XDR and you've been looking for a secondary monitor that will match its resolution so you don't have any wonky differences where one of your monitors is 6K and the other is 4K or 5K and you gotta kind of deal with that, I think that this ASUS ProArt would make an excellent secondary monitor for the Pro Display XDR because aside from brightness, it is quite close in the areas of color accuracy and color spaces supported with 100% sRGB and 98% DCI-P3 coverage, which isn't quite 100% like the Pro Display XDR can hit, but this monitor is also basically 1/5 of the price of that one. Plus it comes with a stand in the box, so please keep that in mind. Now, speaking of other similarities between the Pro Display XDR and this ASUS ProArt, and bringing things back to why I mentioned that DisplayPort 1.4 input may be bothering you earlier, I want you to know that both of these displays, the ASUS and the Apple, run at 60 Hertz, meaning that you're going to be getting a maximum of 60 frames per second on this monitor if you wanted to, say, play games with it. And the reason that I bring this up and why I feel that it's a slight con, especially whenever you compare this monitor to the Pro Display XDR, is that it feels like with that Apple monitor, it's just so gosh darn expensive and specialized for creative work that I don't know of anyone buying one to use for gaming. But because the price of this ASUS is hitting $1,300 and it's also over 5 years newer than the Pro Display XDR, it's in this weird zone where I can see people like me that film and edit videos as a full-time job but that also enjoy playing video games would be intrigued by a monitor like this, but also find themselves wishing that it was 120 Hertz. Because let me just say, with my 5K ultrawide monitor that is also 120 Hertz, that thing feels like a unicorn. It can basically do everything, be it video editing or gaming, and it can do it all extremely well. But it's also not 6K resolution. So I want you to keep this in mind, that while this ASUS ProArt monitor is going to be fantastic for video editing, you're going to be limited to gaming at 60 FPS. And side note, by the way, because I feel that I'm gonna have to say this, even though it feels obvious, I would not recommend gaming in native 6K resolution either. Turn your monitor resolution down to 4K or 2.5K. You are welcome to try gaming at 6K resolution if you want to, but even the most powerful graphics cards are going to look at the amount of pixels you're trying to push and be like, excuse me, what? You want to do what now? Are you insane? Maybe you are. Just know that if you're coming from a 120 Hertz panel, the motion on this monitor is going to feel like a downgrade. But when it comes to video editing, if you're like me, most of the time you're going to be editing footage at 24 or 30 frames per second, and even footage that you film at 60 or 120 frames per second is going to be slowed down to 24 or 30 FPS. So this 60 Hertz refresh rate is not a deal breaker for video editing at all, in my opinion. And bringing it back to that DisplayPort 1.4 port, this is also why the ProArt only needs 1.4 and not a 2.1 DisplayPort input, because it's only 60 Hertz, and that's all it needs for this resolution and refresh rate. Moving on, aside from brightness, I also want to touch on color accuracy and the overall quality of the colors and image that you get with this monitor. And I'll start by saying that just like with other ASUS ProArt monitors, this one is exceptional as well. It comes pre-calibrated from the factory with a nice sheet informing you of all of the test results, but I still wanted to test it out myself, so I grabbed my Spider X2 Ultra color calibrator, connected it to the screen, calibrated it, and I gotta say, the screen looked almost identical pre and post calibration with just a slight tweak to the contrast once it was calibrated. The gamma started at 2.31 initially, then once it was calibrated, it was 2.22, which is very close to the target of 2.20, basically an imperceptible difference. And the Spider software reported that the monitor was hitting 100% of sRGB and 97% of the P3 color space, which, considering that ASUS claims 98%, that's pretty darn close. The Spider didn't tell me if it was like 98.9% or something like that, so it's pretty darn close is what I'm saying. In short, this is a very color accurate panel that I fully believe you will be able to trust when color correcting and color grading your footage. It looks great. To be clear, I always still recommend color calibrating your panels because every panel from a factory is going to be slightly different. And in addition, I want you to keep in mind that this is still an IPS panel. So the contrast isn't going to be as good as an OLED, for example. And it isn't even one of the subgenres of IPS panels like an IPS black, which should have more contrast. But it still looks quite good to my eye, and I wouldn't let the worries about contrast be a deal breaker with this monitor. Most importantly, when it comes to contrast, and one of the reasons that I love a good IPS panel is the viewing angle this monitor has is 178 degrees. So even if you're using it as a secondary monitor where it's off to the side, the colors are not going to get washed out or shift until you're very far from the side of the monitor, meaning you're still going to be able to trust the colors on your screen, that they look how they should, even if your head is not centered directly in front of the screen. And I'll say again, this display is just so sharp. If you film a video in 6K and play it back on the screen, the footage is so crisp. I could see every strand of my beard in perfect detail. It looks incredible. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a screen that could properly and accurately play back my 6K footage. And if that's something you want too, this is going to do it really well. In addition, while this is a matte display, meaning that it doesn't have a reflective glass or something like that on the front of it that would be super reflective, ASUS has a proprietary tech they call Lux Pixel, which is basically anti-glare plus low reflection. And it works really well, where if you have a light shining on the screen, it's not going to make a huge reflection or make the screen hard to see. So if you commonly find yourself editing in a brighter room, this monitor will still work great for that. And it's one of the best monitors that I've used in regards to avoiding reflections. And while we're talking about the image quality and color accuracy of this monitor, this has always been important, but right now it feels more important than ever because creative tools are evolving so fast right now, especially in the area of AI. And it's more important than ever to actually see what you are working with as a creator. And that is where a high quality monitor like this really shines. Check out this example. Over the last couple of months, I've been experimenting with Artlist's, the sponsor of this video by the way, new AI image generator that lets you turn text that you type as a simple prompt on their website into a high quality and realistic looking image. And I have to say, it is one of the coolest creative tools that I've used in quite a while. This AI generator is perfect for concept art, mock-ups, thumbnail ideas, or if you need inspiration for a shot, because you never have to leave your desk or go out and shoot something custom if you aren't sure that you're going to need to use it. You just type your ideas, let them run wild, and in less than a minute, you have an image of what was in your head on your screen. And let me just say, I'm a really visual person. I have a lot of ideas in my head, but I don't really know how good they are until I see them created on a screen in front of me. With Artlist AI image generator, I can see how my ideas look incredibly quickly and know if I then want to go out and film them. It's perfect for conceptualizing images. And this is where a high quality monitor really makes a difference. A sharp, color accurate screen like this one lets you fully appreciate the lighting, texture, and tones, and it really helps you see the nuances in the images and videos so you can confidently use them without second guessing. And speaking of videos, this is so cool. I kind of saved the best for last, is that the Artlist AI generator is not just limited to images. You can make videos with it too, either by turning an AI image that you generated into a video, or you can upload your own image and generate a video from that image. And you can then upscale that video to a very high quality 4K video clip. You can test camera moves and really see how a shot will look in 4K before you film it. And Artlist's new AI tools make it so easy to do. You can check out Artlist's new image and video generator, plus get access to other incredible tools like their AI voiceover creator, stock footage, music licensing, sound effects, and so much more at my link in the video description. And when you sign up using that link, you'll get 2 months added to your subscription for free. Give that Artlist AI image and video generator a try. It may just spark your next big idea. Back to the ASUS ProArt monitor now. ASUS has thrown some other goodies and features into this monitor I think are actually really useful, including an M model P3 mode, which is designed to make the colors look consistent between your MacBook screen and a ProArt monitor. There's also a really useful display widget center app that lets you change and adjust all of your monitor settings without having to use the buttons on the front of the monitor, which I know I had a big rant about loving those buttons on the front of the monitor, and for the sake of convenience, I love that they're there, but if you want to be able to dial in your settings more precisely, I really like this app because you can go in and adjust the gamma, the color temperature, brightness, contrast, saturation, so many things you normally have to press a lot of buttons repeatedly on the front of the monitor to adjust. You can now do this with a few clicks of the mouse, which is really great, and I would love to see all monitor manufacturers offer programs like this. It's like back in the day whenever you had to edit all your BIOS settings with the keyboard, and then suddenly at some point motherboard manufacturers like, hey, what if we added like mouse support? And then people just click around. Revolutionary stuff here, but the ASUS is doing it with their monitors. Let's see all the modern manufacturers offer stuff like that. Or maybe you're wanting a secondary display for your Apple Pro Display XDR, and dropping another $5,000 to $6,000 on another one feels slightly irresponsible. This ASUS is going to give you an identical resolution as that Apple beast, albeit with less than half of the HDR brightness and slightly less color accuracy. But come on, you could buy 4 of these ASUS monitors for roughly the same price as one Pro Display XDR, and let's say the cost of one monitor arm mount if you don't want to buy Apple's stand. And then you could have all 4 of them and you could put them in like a grid and have a 24K resolution system. What? That's crazy. Suddenly you're playing back Blackmagic 17K resolution camera footage and you're like, I got room to spare, Blackmagic. Come on, we need higher resolution. You're crazy and I love it. That's awesome. Anyways, just use the Pro Display XDR for HDR color grading, and then you could have another nice 6K display next to it for your timeline, etc. I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas here. Alternatively though, if you don't have an Apple Pro Display XDR or the budget for one, let's be real, here comes the ASUS with the ProArt PA32QCV. That gives you a pretty darn future-proof 6K resolution, incredibly competitive color accuracy that's also pretty darn future-proof, toss in some extra nice features like a USB hub, KVM switch, settings app, etc. And it's coming in at $1,300. That definitely isn't cheap, and I wish that it was 120 hertz or even 90 hertz versus the 60 hertz that it comes with. But looking around, there ain't many other 6K resolution monitors out there, especially ones that are as color accurate and really feel purpose-built for video editing as this one. So I'll put it this way. If you're wanting an all-in-one monitor that will be amazing for video editing and gaming, and you have more budget to spend, look at that Dell Ultrawide that I reviewed last year. I'll link to it in the video description. 5K resolution at 120 hertz is still crazy to me. But if you are just editing video, or you are okay with gaming at a maximum of 60 FPS, which I feel like there are still a decent amount of people out there that are, I think that the ASUS ProArt PA32QCV is a stellar monitor that you're going to love and be very happy with for many years before it starts to feel even slightly outdated. And heck, here's something I think we can all agree on. With this monitor being $1,300 for 6K resolution, maybe it will help drive down the cost of 5K and 4K monitors to a more affordable level. We can all hope, right? Speaking of things that are affordable, here's something for you for free. You need to check out my edit videos like a pro guide. It's going to show you some of the best techniques that I've learned over the years as a video editor. And like I said, it's completely free and linked down in the video description for you to download. Thanks so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe if you want to see more videos about video editing, filmmaking. Let me know which monitors you'd like me to review, etc. And have a great day.